everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight to the Penn Health for Women at Radnor. And welcome to the first Health for Women Ladies Night Out. My name is Ashley Cafone, and this is Margie Weingarten. We serve on the board of Penn's Women's Health Leadership Council, which was formed of volunteers who work with Penn's Department of OB/GYN to advocate for women's health issues. For those not familiar, Penn Health for Women offers personal health programs designed to empower women to achieve their best health, both physically and emotionally. Ladies Night Out was developed to help women take a break from their busy schedules, set aside just a few hours, and learn more about health and wellness issues that may be relevant to events happening in their own lives. We know that too often, women put a list of things in front of their own needs. How common it is to delay a doctor's appointment because we just can't find the time to squeeze it in, or we think we'll get to it eventually. Months pass, and that is important that a preventative health visit we're never made aware of. But we're diligent in getting our children to the doctors and making appointments for our spouse or parents. Tonight is about thinking of our own health needs. We are pleased to present 4 outstanding Penn Health for Women at Radnor staff who will provide some insight and education about ways to help you reduce stress and improve your life.
First, we'll hear from Andrea Diamond, a registered dietitian and medical nutrition therapist at Penn Health for Women. She is a speaker at Way to Be Sessions, a weight management program held here at Penn Medicine at Radnor. Tonight, Andrea will share practical suggestions for quick, convenient, and easy healthy foods you can stock and prepare for you and your family. She will educate you on how incorporating these healthy foods into your lifestyle will help you to have more energy and better health. Next, we will learn from Dr. Cherie Ditre, Penn dermatologist and director of the Skin Enhancement Center and the Cosmetic Dermatology at Penn Medicine at Radnor. We all know that when you look good, you feel better about yourself. Dr. Ditre will review ways to enhance one's appearance and address the aesthetic concerns women may have. Our third speaker, Dr. Suleena Kansal Kalra, is a Penn fertility care specialist with an area of focus on adolescent reproductive health. As we know, when our children are healthy, we are happy. Therefore, Dr. Kalra will inform you about how to be aware of and understand some of the reproductive changes that your adolescent daughter may be experiencing. Our final speaker, Dr. Neill Epperson, is the director of Penn Center for Women's Behavioral Wellness. Dr. Epperson will review how health maintenance activities through your 30s and 40s can affect your brain health, sexuality, and total well-being both now and in the years to come. There will be time at the end of all 4 presentations for the panel to answer questions. In addition, we wanted to let you know that there is a video camera filming the physicians so that we may post the physicians' presentations online for others to view. However, our audience and the questions and answer session will not be included. So by all means, don't be shy with any of your questions. Also a reminder to take advantage of the refreshments available at your leisure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. I have 2 themes to my presentation this evening, and the first theme is that it is absolutely imperative that no matter what is going on in your life, that you make your health a top priority, that it is imperative. And the second theme is that even taking baby steps now can have a tremendous impact on how you feel physically day to day. And with that, I'm going to move ahead. So, do you really need to be concerned about being on top of your health at your age? I mean, you're young. Do you really have to? Yes. So I want you to know that heart disease and other ails and ills begin actually in childhood for many of us, and certainly by adolescence. There are many signs of unfortunately, heart disease. I note a study here, and it is men, so it's not exactly transferable. However, there is a tremendous amount of literature to document the same for women. I thought this was just very, very interesting that 300 men in this particular study, average age of 22 years old with no previous diagnosis of a heart disease, it was discovered that 77.3% had gross, meaning large, evidence of heart disease. The men were in top condition. They were young. They were vibrant. And what the essence of the study spoke to was the quality of their diet. So they could be in excellent shape. They can be at a normal weight. But the quality of their intake made all the difference in the world as far as their degree of heart disease and how young that really began. 1 of every 20 people under the age of 40 has heart disease. That's frightening. So 40,000 young women are hospitalized every year for heart disease. And you may have the signs of heart disease, hopefully not, but you may now, if you're overweight, obese, have high blood pressure, high blood glucose, have a strong family history. So truly take note and take it very, very seriously. It's really my message to you. So juggling so many responsibilities, that's what we're doing in our lives every single day. And taking care of us, as was just noted, falls away. We become secondary. But I want you to know, and I want you to think of it this way, self-care is not being selfish. It is imperative. You must be number one. So if you do not take care of you now, not only do you suffer, but you're also not modeling healthy behaviors for your loved ones, for people in your life. So, and if you don't take care of you first, you can't possibly be your personal best for those people around you, whether it's work, family, whatever responsibilities you have. You can't possibly be at the top of your game. Okay, so what can you do? What you can do is you can always, believe it or not, prepare to take food with you all the time. Sounds a little nutty, maybe a little compulsive, but it works. It really works. So you're not going to be at the mercy of grabbing whatever there is out there. And many times, as you know, we have the best of intentions, but if we're just grabbing or hoping for the best, it doesn't happen. And we end up not grabbing the best, and it's not available to us. So wake up a few minutes earlier. It'll make the difference, really, between feeling in control of your food choices and not feeling in control of your food choices, which really it permeates really every area of our day if you experience it like I do. Be sure to shop once a week. It sounds like a simple thing, and we have the best of intentions to do that. Sometimes we do it, sometimes we don't, but even that makes a tremendous difference. If you have it on hand, it's going to happen. If you don't, it won't. So having convenient, healthy snacks on hand is so, so important. Take advantage of the shortcuts out there. There's a lot of great things we can do. There's the bagged salads, and I have several examples up here. The chopped prepared fruit salad, sliced turkey breast, low-fat cheeses, rotisserie chickens. There are very healthy foods that you actually can get now. So maybe you're doing some of that and continue to. It really can make all the difference in the world. This is a fairly new area. Many of us have probably experienced this, but I wanted to bring it to your attention because I think it's so, so important. And it's finally coming out in the literature that it holds even more importance than I even realized over the last couple of years. But the more I speak to women about this, and the more women make these changes, they will attest to the fact that they feel entirely different. Their energy level is different. Okay, so let's look at this for a moment. Did you know that these will drain you of energy? Too many fats in your diet, too many sugars, too much white bread, white pasta, white rice, white doughy stuff, refined cereals, sugary stuff, all the stuff that tastes good, eating carbs primarily as a meal, your bagels and all of that thing. Bagels and pasta. We know it's not the most nutrient-dense food, but did you also know that it would truly drain you of energy, that it's really compromising you day to day? And did you also know that these following will drive your cravings like crazy? Okay, sugars, the white starches just noted, artificial sweeteners of all kinds, believe it or not. I don't know if you have experience with that, but many people will get rid of the sugars, but then they're going to go to the diet sodas and the diet iced teas, and they're really just kind of switching, I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it, one poison for another, and I really do feel that strongly about it. And people say to me, well, what about the natural sweeteners? What about Truvia and Stevia and all of those funky new things that are in Trader Joe's and Whole Foods and all of that. Well, guess what? They're really no better because what they are is concentrated sugars and sweets. And what we've done is we've developed a palate that is used to these artificial sweeteners, which are thousands of times sweeter than even a packet of sugar, which is amazing. So I want you to really be aware that if you have these beverages in your life, or if you have packaged foods that have a lot of this in your life, and you're experiencing lots of cravings and mood swings, that this could have a little bit of an impact, and could even have more of an impact for some of us. So just be aware of that. So when people say to me, so what should I have? Water, seltzer, and splashes of lemon, and they look at me like, that is so boring, but anyway. And if not now, when? So anyway, I want you to know that although you can't make perhaps sweeping changes in your life, you don't need to. If you even take small steps, they make a huge, huge difference in your energy and your health. So are you the kind of person that waits until the timing is perfect? Or you have a big block of time? Okay, now I can exercise. Now I can revamp my diet. Well, guess what? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't happen. So you should know that you don't have to be perfect with it to eat perfectly. First of all, none of us eat perfectly. But you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to wait for Monday. You don't have to have a huge block of time. It's not going to happen. Don't wait for it. Okay? The time is now. Okay, so this has really saved me. I work very long hours, like probably many of you. And this has really made a huge difference in my ability to go home in the evening and, just like many of you, don't feel like cooking a meal. What do? I'll take one time during the week, maybe a 2 or 3 hour block of time, even less sometimes, and do what I call batch cook. Even 2 hours a week, believe it or not, hour and a half a week can make all the difference in the world. You can do a tray of chicken, a pot of turkey meatballs, you can do any of these, a big pot of soup, and I draw on that all week long, and it's amazing. So it's fresh, healthy food. You can draw on it. You can put a meal together in 10 minutes. If you take that hour and a half, it's just incredible. And truly, then you're not at the mercy of all the processed and the packaged and the over-salted and the over-sugared. So anyway, truly consider it. It may not work out every week, but it could really have a tremendous impact even most of the time. I like to look at this actually as a most of the time way of living. We can't possibly do this 100%, but even that will keep us feeling energetic and healthy most of the time if you can. So here's a lot of ideas. Perhaps some of these would be helpful for you to do. I know they have been for me. Okay, what about living with other people? So we live with other people, many of us, and if you know, like I do, that having potato chips in the house is a major trigger, and when somebody brings it in, I say, why did you do that? Because I could go through the whole thing in 1 second. Anyway, so important to look at what is a trigger for you, because it really is, instead of also looking at, well, I know I can have the willpower this time. Why set yourself up like that? Look at your home environment, look at your food environment, and determine, what really works for you. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. Keep it out of your house. So look at what is a trigger food. What's going to support me? How can I embellish my environment so that I'm supported? And if you do live with other people, have it be a negotiation. It has to be a win-win, okay? So keeping some low-fat, low-calorie treats on hand, there's no problem with that, unless, of course, it's a trigger. And don't deprive. When you feel deprived, that's the beginning of the end, I think. Okay, setting boundaries. Setting boundaries with ourselves, I think, is very, very important. So even if you do have a treat around, you might say to yourself, at night I'm going to enjoy a little something or other, but otherwise I'm going to be very careful about my diet. Be a little bit strict with yourself in that way, and that pays off also. It's kind of a nice balance. Avoiding sugary drinks and all artificial sweeteners to minimize those cravings again, as I mentioned before, is a really, really important thing to do. And having some strategies up your sleeve to avoid eating for reasons other than hunger. If you're not eating because you're hungry, you're overeating. So just know that. Strategies, there's many, many out there. And really, I want you to see this, and I think I have it in another slide coming up. I want you to see this as building new skills, that I'm taking on and trying to do one new thing, and I'm going to practice How many of us think of our relationship with food in terms of practicing new skills? But I think it's a very important way to look at it, because then you don't feel that you are depriving or dieting, or it's a pass-fail kind of a thing, a success-failure, but you're really just improving the foundation of what you do to live a healthier, more balanced life. Okay, so what do you need? You need at least 5 servings of fruits and veggies a day. How do I get that? My gosh, it seems overwhelming, but it's really not. 1 banana is 2 servings of fruit. Anyway, we can get it in very, very easily, and perhaps later we can talk about that in more detail if you wish. 3 to 4 servings of calcium-containing foods to be sure that we're getting the calcium that we need. Very, very important. Or certainly having it in terms of a calcium supplement if you can't get that through food. 6 to 7 ounces of protein a day. I think many of us may overdo it on protein. Protein has been overrated. We have to get our basic minimal amount. But I think that especially with supersizing, which still, even with all the hype out there that it is so unhealthy for us, there's still plenty of supersizing out there. So be careful. Even with healthy foods such as fish or salmon, if it's too large, we're overdoing it, and it could have implications. Whole grains. Try to, again, stay away from the whites. Go for the whole grains. Heart-healthy fats. Fats in small to moderate amounts will not make you fat. It's when we have too many fats. And be sure that the fats that you get primarily are the heart-healthy ones. Again, the nuts, nut butters, oils, avocado. Those are where you're getting your omega-3 fatty acids, which is, and the reason for that being an important part of what we get is that our body doesn't manufacture that. So you need to take that in through food every day in a small amount in one of those forms. Okay, more key nutrients that you need for your age. Folate, a B vitamin. It reduces the risk of heart disease, supports healthy pregnancies, and it's important in generating new cells. These are some of the sources of folate, as well as, of course, a multivitamin. Iron, energy, mental sharpness. These are, again, some sources: lean beef, fortified cereals, soybean, pumpkins, poultry. Calcium, we've spoken about. Did you know? We all know that calcium is important for bones and teeth and all of that, but weight loss? Did you know about the association of calcium and weight loss? Very, very important. And also, it's not in my slides, but sleep also, and weight loss, by the way. I'm not talking about sleep tonight, but sleep, getting adequate sleep is very important in maintaining a healthy weight. So you should just know that as well. Phytonutrients and antioxidants, very, very important. Lots of fruits and vegetables, and kind of a volume way of eating with fruits and vegetables. High water content foods that are primarily fruits and vegetables will help you to feel sated, keep your weight down, and provide you with all of these nutrients. And if you like my little smiley faces there, it slows aging, helps prevent disease, especially the brightly colored fruits and vegetables, the deeply colored ones. Red wine, yay. Dark chocolate, yay. Caffeine, my personal favorite. Don't take my Starbucks away. So anyway, and so to end, staying healthy is your choice no matter what is going on in your life, no matter what. We all have time crunches, we all have excuses, but no matter what, we can do it. So choose to live as energetic a life as possible. If comfort, stress, or emotional eating has you hooked, there are strategies. There is help that you can get. So with support and powerful strategies, you can overcome it. I see this, again, as building new skills and just practicing new strategies, thinking about it in a different way, restructuring some of the behaviors, some of the things that you already do, and you can overcome it. So this, again, is about building new skills to lay a foundation of good health. It's not about dieting and depriving. Striving for a balanced life, taking on one new healthy habit to practice at a time, and that's how you build new skills. And I implore you, stay healthy. Okay, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So Andrea, I think when you were talking about sleep deprived, that's my excuse. I think I need a card. It was very helpful, by the way. Okay, everybody, we're going to have a little fun tonight, I hope. By the way, I left you samples over here, and I even left things for the men that you can take home so that when you need Botox, you can say, but honey, I got you this. You know what I mean? Home with a little in any event. What I was going to ask is somebody from the audience, if they wouldn't mind coming up and being my model, and we're going to go through what a cosmetic consultation in my office would be like. Do we have any takers? Come on down. Great. And we actually have prizes for you when you volunteer. Alrighty. There we go. So the first thing we talk about, when you come into the office is really, strategies for really making your skin the best it can be, okay? And the most important thing that I want to tell you is sunscreen. I know you all heard about sunscreen, but it's really, really important nowadays to understand that it's really important for you, despite the myth that you're hearing about vitamin D. We had the guy, Dr. Hala, come to the university, and also at the American Academy of Dermatology, and we grilled him. As dermatologists, what are you telling these people, not to use vitamin, to get their vitamin D and not use sunscreen? And he actually admitted, okay, just 15 minutes a day. But we're saying still, it's important. You still can get it exogenously. And the important thing to remember, and I know I'm not talking about vitamin D, but the bottom line is that wearing sunscreen doesn't really, make you not get your vitamin D. But so you have to do it every day. It's really important. And what's the right strength? SPF 30. Okay, that's what we're telling patients. So really, I'm going to pass around. A lot of people say to me, sunscreen, I don't like that sunscreen. It's so yucky. It gets in my eyes when I run, and it burns, and it stings, and it hurts. Well, let me tell you something. I'm going to pass this around. I want you to all to just feel this on your skin. This is one of the nicest sunscreens I think around. It's titanium and zinc. Zinc, you say, that's when you were a lifeguard, right? You got that white, pasty look. This is great stuff. Put a little bit on your hand and pass it around. It's really great. It's actually made by a plastic surgeon. I'm not, out here to sell anything, but the bottom line is I think it's a really great to demystify sunscreen. So that's the most important thing I want to tell you tonight. All right, so we're going to actually have some fun with you. What's your first name, hon? Hey, Mary Eileen. There it is. Wow. Right, here we go. So I want you, when you come into my office, I'd like you to take a look in the mirror. I think you know what you want to get done, but the most important thing is to really help you. And here's my magic wand. Okay? So we're going to give you what you need tonight to transform your face. Poof, if I can wave my magic wand, I mean, what we're going to do for you, okay? What bothers you the most? Show me what bothers you. What bugs you? The wrinkles and the dark circles. I think a lot of women complain about that, right? And what we found is that there are things that we can do for both, but not 100%, okay? So when we're talking about the periorbital wrinkles, so the crow's feet, can you smile for me? As you can see, if you look at Eileen, you can see those somewhat etched in lines. How about bring your eyebrows together for me, like really round? Yeah, so she has maybe one child. You see that line there, those glabellar wrinkles. And raise the forehead up, raise them all the way up. And those transverse wrinkles. And I was watching some of you out there, and I know I'm getting them too. It happens as we, 30s, 40s, 50s. And so people talk about what? Botox. You've all heard about Botox, right? Botulinum toxin. Oh my God. Putting in a potent, paralytic agent. What's that going to do for you? Well, it does a lot. And it's been tested since the 1960s. And do you know how it was discovered? Dr. Alan Scott, who's an ophthalmologist, actually was using it for blepharospasm for patients that had problems, in their periocular regions, spasming. And he put it in there, and he found that it stopped. Lo and behold, it paralyzed the muscle for a temporary period of time. So what happened was Dr. Jean Carruthers, who's a personal friend of mine from Vancouver, went down, and she was studying with him and doing a fellowship. And she noticed that, patients were looking a little better. And so a mother who was getting it for her child said, let me try it. So she got it on one side of her face before her child. And lo and behold, her wrinkles went away. Light bulb, and $2 billion later, Botox was born. And so her husband's a dermatologist, and we're colleagues. And so they really worked out and mapped out this system. And so, there's good, bad, and the ugly, right? So let's talk about that. Basically, Botox does its job. It lasts anywhere from 3 to 6 months, okay? As you get it, it lasts longer. So the first time you get it, you might say 3 to 4 months. The next time you get shot up, it might be 4 to 5 months. And then max is about 6 months. So as we've studied this, with time, you seem to biofeedback. Give yourself and education, because you don't wrinkle like that, again, for whatever reason. And I've done this with my nurses who have those lines as they're seeing patients, and they're like, you know, this type of thing. Or people that are, you know, on that treadmill, trying to get healthy, right? But they're making those frowns, and they're making those lines deeper. So by relaxing it, I took a lady that almost looked like a Shar-Pei. She was fit. You would have loved her, Andrea. I know I'm your disappointment, but she was absolutely perfectly fit. But she had the lines, and I said, ha-ha. Now here's where I can help you. And we did. We did for a year. We did her every 4 months, and we did her Botox. And oh my God, what a difference at the end of it. You know, at the end of it. So for this nice lady, I would use the botulinum toxin, and I would put it into the crow's feet. I put a little bit here, and I also can give her a little bit of a brow lift. Now she's not so bad, is she? I mean, when you look at her, poor woman. That's why I had prizes for you, by the way, if you go through this torture. But I'm also going to bring out. So you see her little crinkle? We're all getting. I noticed that one day. I kept saying, "What's that hair there?" You know what I mean? It's a wrinkle. And basically, we do it when we push our faces and smush them up against the pillow, right? We create these wrinkles, and you can actually put it in these what we call the bunny lines. Like, smell something bad for me. You see them? And so Botox can go there as well. So it's really kind of cool. And you know, botulinum toxin is not only for cosmetic. It's actually been found for what? For medical uses. We use it for hyperhidrosis. We use it in patients that have had, you know, the sialuria, you know, patients with Parkinson's disease. They actually use it for rectal fistulas, to relax the fistula. I mean, it's been used for a lot of different disorders. It's actually one of the highest uses is Children's Hospital for people, you know, the children with cerebral palsy that have contractures and to relax them. So it's really quite interesting, and it works. You know, a lot of people say, well, you know, can you have a problem with it? Sure, with anything, you know. You can get brow ptosis, which means your brow drops a little bit or your eyelid drops. But if it happens, it only lasts 3 weeks. But there's something in the office we can use to stop that. So that's an important thing for you to know. But you might have heard, oh my God, I read where somebody died from botulinum toxin. Oh, they did. And you know how that happened? Some crazy chiropractor who got his hands on in Tucson, Arizona. He had friends that worked in a laboratory. And they got rat botulinum toxin. And what did he do? He didn't realize that the units that he was using was different than human using a unit. So he gave it to his patients. I'm going to give you Botox. And he was giving them 100,000 international units. You say, well, what does that mean? That's a lot. For example, in my friend here, I would probably use no more than 50 units. He did 100,000. So what did he do? He put 2 people in the hospital on respirators because they couldn't breathe. Okay, there's a difference between rat Botox and human Botox, for sure, and we know that, so don't worry. Okay. It's important. The other thing we can do with it, I was looking around, some people, the great beauty just died, Elizabeth Taylor. Look at her eyebrows. She's got the best eyebrows. Just Google her, you see. I love her eyebrows. You know, they have that beautiful arching. The most feminine look is eyebrows. I'm looking at you. You have beautiful eyebrows. You know, nice arch. Yeah, you. She wins. They nice arch shaped. You know, we like to do that, right, ladies? We like to pluck them or have them waxed or whatever. Botox can help you with that. It can actually lift. How does it do it? Well, there you go. Perfect timing. Now, I do want to point out, one eyebrow is lower, right, and one's up. So I can actually fix that for her with botulinum toxin. What we would do is we would relax you here, okay? Either relax this a little bit or let this muscle take over by relaxing this muscle over here, because now this has to work harder and it pulls up. And so you can actually get them to even out. A lady in today that had what they call a gummy smile, you see her gums, you know what I mean? We can actually try to get ready for a wedding. And so she wants to get that done in her upper lip, so you can bring the lip down so she doesn't have that gummy smile. You could actually put it in depressor angularis, or she doesn't have it. You know, I think I'm getting, you know, right in here for these melolabial lines to lift them up. You're antagonizing muscles. So what happens is you take a muscle that's pulling and you relax it, and then it corrects. You understand what I'm saying? So what we want to do is try to create an arch. If I want to create more of an arch in her if she needed it, then what I would do is really relax the middle. So this comes down, this goes up, and she gets more of that dramatic Elizabeth Taylor eyebrow. You know, so it's important. I mean, these are things simple things that can be done with just botulinum toxin. Who knew, right? It's really quite interesting. Perioral lines around, you know, there's the lip lines, lipstick lines that go in. You don't have them. But if you did, you know, we would actually put it around the lips. Now, people that are singers, trumpet players, don't do it because it relaxes it such that when you go to sip something, you know, you could dribble a little bit for the first week or 2. That's a caution. Some people that are very, not as well endowed, they actually use it to bring their nipples up, or those décolleté wrinkles. You can use Botox there. It's really amazing the different areas you can use Botox, But in any event, for you, I would do some in the crow's feet, in her glabella, this is between the eyebrows, in the forehead to write this eyebrow, and I would also use it in her budding lines. That's to start. Anything else? Poor woman. No, she asked me about, the other thing was the dark circles, right? Dark circles. Yeah, there you go. She's saying if she gets some sleep, she's better. And it's the truth, I saw my niece, she's 5 years old at the time, and she had these awful dark circles. And I'm like, look at it, she's only 5. How could it possibly be aging or this or that or the other thing? When you look at this, you actually biopsy this, et cetera, there's no one thing, no one answer for it. Part of the reason for dark circles is just thickened skin. So using exfoliants like alpha hydroxy acids and retinoids can actually make it look better, okay? A lot of your cosmetics have diffusers in them to make them lighter so that when the light hits it, it diffuses the light and makes them look less deep and therefore less dark, okay? Other reasons is that you're actually seeing the muscle, and obviously my 5-year-old niece at the time, you could actually see the very thin skin. It's very, very thin compared to the rest of the body. This is the thinnest skin right here. Even on my body, it's the same. One thing thin. But in any event, the bottom line is that you can actually see that dark muscle underneath there. And so what's happening is you're like telescoping it. You're seeing that dark, and you think of a slab of beef. You go red, brown beef right there. That's what's underneath here, okay? And so what happens is you're seeing that. So how do you repair that? Well, you can actually use fillers. These are what we call, stuffings, to put under the skin to lift it up so that it camouflages. That's another way to do it. And if the skin is really super wrinkly and thin, then you would actually use a laser. In your case, I would start with just simple products, okay? We'll show you, okay? Now, anything else bug you? Not really? You're happy? So she comes in, she walks out feeling worse than when she came in, right? You have a little freckling, So, see, some people do, and that's what patients tell me. But see, to a dermatologist, we think, sun damage, you know what I mean? But if you like them, you can keep them. But some people don't like them. So what do I do for them? We do microdermabrasions. That's a sanding down type of technique, very superficial. It comes in, you can leave. You can have it what they call lunchtime type of thing. Like chemical peels, like salicylic acid peels or glycolic acid peels can help. You don't have to be all and end all. But then we also use bleaching agents at home. Okay, so those are different things that we can do, and obviously a laser will take them away, but I would not recommend that for you because she likes her freckles, so we're not going to torture you. Now, this time of year, right, a lot of people are going to wear sandals, right? And they look at the back of their heel, and they're all cracked, right? Rough, dry. Run out to get a pedicure next week. It's the same thing. You could be at the pedicure office every other day, to try to get these down. So there's products that have these alpha hydroxy acids in them to help the heel. You take a little pumice stone, you put these 20% alpha hydroxy acid, the fruit acids, on it, and it actually does cause it to slough, okay? And you do that every night before you go to bed. Really, you can see your pedicurist maybe just to get, some nail color change, but that's about it. And so that's a really nice product, and actually, that's one of the products that I have for you tonight. So, okay? And then in addition, we need something for our bodies. The most important thing is really a lot of people like that supple, soft skin. Do you ever get that where on the back of your arm, it gets really rough, especially in the wintertime? It looks like little pimples on the back. You think you have acne. It's called keratosis pilaris. And it's really kind of interesting. There are things you can do for it, okay? And I'm going to give you something. You may or may not need it, but you could use the body lotion. This is called a retexturizing body lotion with an SPF 15 in it, just for daily use. But if you're going out in the sun, you're going to wear a what? Oh, there you go. Okay, great. The SPF 30 or greater. Okay, that's really key. Okay, and so that's important so that, this is you can put from your neck down, and we didn't forget your face. Okay, these are alpha hydroxy acids. They have different concentrations. I just happen to pick Light, and we have other products. We're not married to one company here. We're not the commercial sponsor for this company, but they happen to give us free products, so I'm giving it to you. And I like them. We use them, and we really like them a lot. So we got a face lotion for you once a day in the morning. You got your body lotion after your shower. You got a heel, and you're going to be all set for the summer. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. Do we have time for one other person? I got another bag of goodies. You want to be the person? We can do one other person. I'm actually going to pick, can I pick you? I'm going to pick this. And I'll tell you why. Because Eileen, we're just taking different, I'm looking around and I'm trying to think of different things I want to tell you. All righty. Thank you very much. And your name is?
Valerie.
Valerie, hi. Okay, here's the magic wand. Here we go.
Do it again.
Really, I know what you mean. Valerie, when you look at yourself, what bugs you?
Oh, everything. The line here.
She's got a couple kids there, don't you?
This is probably 25 years of sunning with baby oil up to the age of 30.
Yeah, I hear you.
No sunscreen as a child.
Hear that? And she's pretty fair, you know what I mean? So she's going to get more sun, and like you and you, I'm looking around all you fair people back there. I mean, you really do want to, concentrate on your sunscreen. That's number one. It's your most important beauty product of anything we can give you, okay? All right, so we're talking about number one here.
Did you see those lines when I first walked in?
I did. Scouting around. Andrea's looking at me from the neck down. I'm looking at the neck up. And we're going to be talking about you in the private parts. And she's definitely going to help him up here between the ears. And I need all of it. So I need all your cards. In any event, the bottom line is that when I look at there, I really think Botox would help. But is it our only answer? Maybe not. Unlike you, where your wrinkles at rest are mild, and you just have that little, irregularity in your brow. She's wrinkles at rest, but some of those are etched in. Do you see how you can really see it right there? And frown for us, like really bring it in. Yeah, see, I can put a little penny in there, and I bet you it'll stay. So when they get that deep, the Botox can help. It can soften it, but she's still going to see it. And then you'll come back and she'll say, Dr. Ditre, that Botox didn't work. And I can understand why you would say that. Because I should have told you, and this is why I'm telling you, is that you might need two things, I know? So basically we have to put it at rest to stop that kinetic motion of the wrinkle, and then we have to put a stuffing in the wrinkle, so to speak, to lift it and separate it like a good Playtex bra. Because the whole idea is that we have attrition of the muscle. By doing this constantly, we're etching that in, okay? And then what happens is the mattress of the skin, called the dermis, is really actually wearing away. So there's less collagen. So we want to put something into that mattress to replace what's gone, and that would be fillers. So what are fillers? I started thinking when you were talking about nutrition, we really actually talk about the same thing. We have protein, which is botulinum toxin. It's a protein. We have carbohydrates, which is our fillers, which we're going to talk about, and then we, of course, have fat. And we could actually take it here and put it up here. I have enough for the whole room here. But in any event, do we want to do that? That's two processes. The fat, you have to harvest it, and then you have to transplant it. Where the fillers, you have it already, boom, boom, you're done. You come in, and within a half an hour, you walk out, rejuvenated. So what I would do here is I probably put a little filler. And you probably see on the television, get rid of your parentheses, It's not only your parentheses. I don't like that ad because, first of all, even some children have parentheses. You look at little kids, they've got those lines. So do they need fillers? No. But, the bottom line, is that you do want to put, these hyaluronic acid, your starches, your carbohydrates, back into the skin. We have a lot of it when we're a kid. Hyaluronic acid, we have tons of it when we're a kid. By the age of 30, we start losing it. So every decade, we're dropping it. And so that's the problem. So we want to put it back in because it holds 1,000 times its weight in water to itself. It's like a dermal sponge, under your skin. So by putting it in, it actually helps to keep that filled and buoyant. Now, I look at you and I say, nasolabial folds, I have them myself. And here, that's another place where she can get them. And I was just saying to her, I don't like that ad about the parentheses because why? If you think about it, and I've actually taught this to the dermatology community, we really need to think about the cheeks. Because if you actually, many of us go like this, and as you do that, those lines go away, don't they? Right? So what happens is if we use fillers to lift and give her more cheeks, she has less weight in the nasolabial fold. So when we do, it's not only important just to fill here, but maybe to fill a little bit in here, because we start losing that with time. And if you look at people who have lost weight, that's where they lose it a lot in their cheeks, and they start looking gaunt. You know what I mean? So, that's another area. Because if you look at our Valerie, right in here, she's getting a little depression. And if we lifted her back to probably the way she was when she was 10, right? And give her a little bit more here into the cheek, you'll see that lifting and softening of the nasolabial folds. We can also do it down in here into the pregial sulcus and the melolabial folds, And we also can use it in the lips, you know, and we can actually enhance the lips. And a lot of us like to draw them on because as time goes by, we lose them. You know, it's better when you have an overbite because, you know, actually my prosthodontist told me this when I was 26, keep it, you know, you look like Ingrid Bergman. I still don't look like Ingrid Bergman, but you know, I have to, you know, so, and I have less lines on my upper lip. That might be part and parcel of the reason. Because as we age, what happens, everything falls down and back, okay? And as we lose that, you ever notice as people get older that the lips go in and they don't have lips anymore? Well, what we're trying to do is bring them back out, and we can do that with these fillers like hyaluronic acid. Hyaluronic acid has been tested in over 1 million people worldwide, and the incidence of infection or problems is less than 0.25%, which is really pretty good. So if I'm going to start with fillers, there's many, by the way. There's Radiesse, there's Sculptra. These are different agents. These are contouring agents. These last longer, but they have a little bit more issues with them that you have to know about. For example, hyaluronic acid, if we were to inject you, you know, all that glitters is in gold, you can get bruising, and I always tell patients that's one of the natural side effects of the bruising, you know, and swelling. And that swelling will last anywhere from 24 to 48 hours. Okay, Val, you still on board with me? Okay. There you go. But, you know, so and the bottom line is that, yeah, 24 to 48 hours is the swelling and the bruising. You can ice that. But the key is not to have, and this is the reason why we have these consultations, stop your aspirin, Motrin, Advil, you know, anything where you could possibly use anticoagulates and make yourself bruise more, okay? And that's key because people come in and they've taken their fish oil, for example, Andrea. Oh my gosh, they ooze and ooze and ooze. And I did a lady today and she was oozing and oozing. She forgot to stop her fish oil, you know? And really, it really is a wonderful anticoagulant, I'll tell you. So the bottom line is these are the keys that we have to tell you. Now you also have, you ready? Poor woman. The other thing is, and again, she would be a perfect person. We call this dermatochalasis. Do you see upper eyelids? You might look in the mirror. There you go. But you can do that with Botox. I just mentioned that. So I can actually give her a look like that, you know, to just lift them a little bit so that she doesn't have that heaviness here. And a lot of ophthalmologic surgeons, you know, actually do it first so you can get an idea of what it's going to look like. You know what I mean? Before you do like Kenny Rogers with the cut. I think he would have rather had Botox first before he got cut because he looks totally different. This is a temporary thing, and you can see if you like it. If you don't like it, you don't get the blepharoplasty. You know what I'm saying? Most people today are doing Botox and fillers as their number 1 and number 2. It has really, I mean, this has gone off the market. There's a 57% increase in Botox and fillers because people don't want to go under the knife. Remember the lady from the first Wise Club? Went to have a little fat reduced, right? Died on the table. So not that should scare you because after all, we have, and especially here at Penn, we have excellent plastic surgeons and oculoplastic surgeons and all of that. You know, but people like to try a little bit, you know, like to kick the tires before they buy the car, right? And this is a good way to do that. It's a nice way to introduce yourself into cosmetics, you know, and really get on board.
How long do the fillers last?
Great question. The studies have shown, that they first came out, we did some trials, it was 6 months. And then we actually went back because patients were coming back and saying, okay, but you know, do I need it again? You know, I don't think so. And you look at the patient, they still look great. So I said, nah, come back in another 6 months. So what happened was they actually went for the indication for 1 year. So these hyaluronic fillers like Restylane and Juvederm, okay, both of them have lasted now 1 year. And I've had patients go to 2 years with them. And I think that's just because you put enough in it the first time. You know, if you only fill, you know, if you're 1 pint down and you'd give just a half a pint, you know, you're not doing the person justice. You have to fill to capacity, so to speak. And you don't know that until you really get in. Because some people will fool you. You know, you can see some people that have really deep lines, you know, and you know that they're going to need it. But people that have some shallow lines, you might need a little bit more. And obviously, it's priced accordingly, you know, to, you know, the more you use, it gets a little bit cheaper, okay? And so the answer to your question is 1 year, okay? Some people longer. Now, the others, like Sculptra, you're going to see a lot on the daytime soaps now, they have Sculptra, you know? And you know what Sculptra is? It's lactic acid. It's sour milk. What happened was I was doing a lot of work. I actually worked with the guy that invented alpha hydroxy acids. He's a Philadelphian. And, you know, we're really lucky in Pennsylvania because we had the 2 major scientific breakthroughs in topical skincare, alpha hydroxy acids and retinoids. Nobody to date, I don't care what oil Olay tells you, you know, the bottom line, it's a great product, but, you know, the 2 most important scientific advances with scientific studies underneath their belt are alpha hydroxy acids and retinoids. And Dr. Kligman, who passed last year, was a personal friend, a mentor. He's the Retin-A maven. And of course, he was here at University of Pennsylvania. And then we had Dr. Eugene Van Scott, who's the alpha hydroxy acid maven, and I worked with him and developed a peel system for him. And it's really quite, quite fascinating. And these are the fruit acids: glycolic, lactic, citric, all those acids he developed. You think about it for the body. Glycolic acid is from sugar cane. Uh-oh. But it works for the skin. You're just applying it, not, like Rhoda Morgan says, for me, I applied it and I should have just ate the chalk. But in any event, the bottom line is that they work, And then you have, citric acid from citrus fruits, right? Lactic acid, sour milk. So when they take these crystals, they actually take the crystals and they put it into the skin. They actually saw the skin plump up. And they used it for AIDS patients, and actually makes a big deal of difference. And it lasts 25 months, so 2 years and a month, okay? So there's some contouring agents, which the difference being, the contouring, you wouldn't see the results right away. I mean, you'll see it immediately, but then it'll fade off in a week. And then it takes like 2 or 3 injection sessions to really get it. I make the analogy, it's like if you go to, Waterloo Gardens and you buy your beautiful daffodils and you just plop them into the ground and now your garden's filled, okay? But guess what? After that season, they're gone. That's a filler. That is like your Restylane and your Jupiter. After that year, they're gone. Whereas sculpture is like putting a seed in. Okay, you plant the seed, and you got to wait, and you might fertilize it and give it a little bit more, and so forth. And then you see your garden, and then that's going to last you about 2 years, a little bit more. So those are the difference between a contouring agent and a filler. Okay. Time. I'm going to stop there. What a wonderful segment. And I have something for you as well. These are your good. It's this. I kept it the same, but there you go. I'm going to start there, and I thank everybody for coming. And if you have any questions, I'll stick around.
All right. So I guess I'm in charge of talking about the private parts. I feel like we could have gone on with this segment a little longer. All right, so many of you out there are parents, and I think I'm going to shift the gears a little bit here, but I know I'm a parent too, and I think part of feeling well has a lot to do with how much anxiety we have about our own children. And one of the things I hear a lot of women in this age group being particularly anxious about is all the stuff that's out there in the media that we're getting bombarded with, especially in reference to puberty. So I'm going to talk briefly about puberty to hopefully equip you with some knowledge as you maybe help your daughters go through this change. So I'm going to start by just kind of overviewing normal puberty, what timing, sequence, and tempo is. I'm going to talk about what initiates puberty and some interesting new data about modulating factors with puberty. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about when to bring in your child for an evaluation, or she's not really a child anymore, although she'll always be your child, but when you should seek evaluation from a physician. So in terms of what is puberty, puberty is defined as the period of first becoming capable of reproduction. There's a lot that's happening during this time. Many of you may remember it from 8th grade or so. Involves maturation of genital organs, development of secondary sex characteristics, most notably breast development. There's an acceleration in growth. The growth spurt occurs during puberty. Changes in affect. Many of you may be able to attest to this if you've had to deal with the changes in affect in your child as she navigates this. And in females, it culminates with the onset of menarche. And menarche is basically the first period, the first menstrual cycle. So there's a wide range here, and one of the questions I get asked a lot is, what is normal? And really, the definition of what is normal has changed and continues to evolve. So the first sign of puberty is breast development. The average age in this country of breast development is age 10, but there's a wide range, and now we're seeing that breast development starting at age 7 or 8 in a girl can be normal, all the way up to being delayed until age 13. This is followed by the growth spurt, and we see the growth spurt because estrogen is being released. It acts directly on bone, and we generally see that peak height velocity or the peak spurt about 6 months prior to the onset of periods. And finally, the onset of the first period generally occurs about 2.5 years after breast development, and the average age in this country is about 12.5 years. So what factor initiates puberty? The exact signal is not completely known. This is a very busy slide. It's one that I show our medical students. But what's so interesting about this is that this early part of the slide shows weeks of pregnancy. So what that's showing us is that I always say to my patients, the other hat I wear is fertility, infertility. But Mother Nature is cruel and unfair, and she gives women the most number of eggs they'll ever have when they're still in their mother's uterus at 5 months pregnancy, okay? A female fetus has about 2 million eggs. At birth, she's already lost them down to 1 million. At puberty, there's about 500,000 eggs. And then throughout our reproductive lifetime, those eggs are lost, and the average age of menopause in this country is 52. And that's when you're kaput out of eggs, okay? Your ovary says, I am retired. I've done my job. So what's interesting here, though, is that actually that female fetus is born with everything there. And something happens at birth that turns it off. So this is this very quiet period of time from 2 to 10. Everything's just shut off, and something happens that releases this brake. It's considered a brake, and the brain is what controls all of this, and there's some signal that releases the brake that then initiates puberty. So everything is controlled from the brain, and the brain is what sends down the message to the ovary to make an egg, make estrogen, and estrogen is what causes these effects on bone and menstruation. So it's a very elegantly regulated system, and the brain actually gets feedback from the body. I always tell the medical students the only reason women have periods evolutionarily is to reproduce. So your brain can get signals from your body saying, is this a good time to reproduce? It hears about energy stores, it hears about stress levels, due to circulating hormones in your bloodstream, okay? And so different things can turn on or turn off that message from the brain. One that we're learning a lot about is something called leptin. Leptin is a hormone that's related and released from fat cells. So high levels of fat, high levels of leptin, low levels of fat, low levels of leptin, okay? So very, very low body fat. The body says, is this a good time for me to sustain another being for 9 months? No. And it shuts off reproduction, okay? So a girl who's very, very underweight will not turn that on, will not turn that signal on. The brain will say, it's not a good time. I need to conserve energy. I don't have enough metabolic fuel here, all right? So we know that leptin is important in initiating that signal. And really, we're talking more and more in my field about this threshold effect, that there is a critical body weight and percent fat mass that is necessary to turn on puberty. And especially nowadays, there's a lot of pressure, and I'm seeing a lot of teenagers who are struggling with either maintaining their periods because their body turns this off because there's not enough fat stores, or even getting them. The flip side is true as well. High levels of fat will release higher levels of leptin, and that gives the body the signal that there's more reserve. And so we do see that heavier or obese girls will undergo puberty sooner, okay? And that can have its own set of issues with early breast development, early onset of periods. So another reason to have your child maintain a healthy weight. So what factors influence puberty? This is just an interesting graph from the 1840s until the 1960s. You've seen that the age of menarche worldwide has been decreasing. So we know that actually the average age of the onset of first period has been decreasing about 2 to 3 months per decade for the last 150 years. The National Health Institute actually does this huge survey, and they found that the average age now is 2.3 years, which is again about 2 months prior to 10 years prior data. And we know that part of this is due to improved standards of living, especially if you're comparing it to the 1840s. But part of it is also due to the increase in obesity that we're seeing worldwide. Other issues that influence the onset of puberty include genetic variation, and race and ethnicity plays a large role in this. There's environmental studies looking at sort of different factors that might be influencing puberty, and I keep talking about nutritional status. So genetics, we know that there's good correlation between the age of first period between mothers and daughters and between sisters. And we know that it's very normal to see racial differences in onset of puberty, especially African American girls have earlier age of menses than their white counterparts. This is just a graph looking at breast development, and you can see that for each age group, African American children are much more likely to have breast development compared to whites, and this is part of the racial difference I'm talking about. And of course, that does also translate into an earlier age of puberty. So the first sign of puberty is breast development, and you can see that at age 8, over a third of African Americans will have breast development compared to 10% of white Americans. And this data is actually old. I'm going to show you something in a minute. So nutritional status is very important. We talked about obese girls have puberty at an earlier age. Girls with anorexia or delayed or extreme physical conditioning will have delayed puberty. I don't know how many of you guys saw this. The media's really interested in puberty, and this was a big story at the end of the summer that a large study was done and found that girls in the U.S. are actually entering puberty earlier than before. So I showed you the data from before, but this is girls at the age of 7 who have breast development. And in 1997, so this is second grade, okay, 5% of white girls had breast development, and that's up to 10% now. So 1 in 10 second grade girls has breast development now. Interestingly, there was no difference, even though it looks like it's very different for Black Americans. That was not statistically significant. But we are certainly seeing that compared to 1997, just a little over 10 years ago, there has been a big shift in terms of how many white girls are entering puberty at age 7 and 8. And again, this comes with a set of issues. Earlier maturation has lower self-esteem, less favorable body image. There's a higher chance of eating disorders, an earlier age of first intercourse. So it's definitely something we're keeping an eye on, and it's something that you should be prepared that you may be seeing this more. The question is why? I mean, that's really the big question. Why is this happening that we're seeing this earlier onset? And the answer is nobody exactly knows. Of course, anyone who goes to a grocery store right now knows you're going through the aisle, oh my gosh, it must be hormones in food. Everything has to be organic and no antibiotics and no growth hormone, et cetera. The reality is the studies to date have not borne that out. Okay, so there's no evidence that giving your daughter the regular milk instead of the organic milk is going to make her undergo puberty sooner. The data that came about food outbreaks was from the 1970s. In Puerto Rico, there was contaminated food supply with high levels of estrogen, and they had a little outbreak of breast budding in 7-year-olds, but since then it really hasn't borne out. So having said that, many people are buying the hormone-free food. I'm just saying there's not great evidence to back it up. Something that's gotten a lot more attention recently are these endocrine disruptors, so estrogen-like endocrine disrupting chemicals. So the most common one that you hear about is bisphenol A, BPA. So if you're going to buy the water bottles, you'll see the ones that say BPA-free. Basically, there was some rodent studies in mice that showed that BPA exposure may have changed some of the expression in the fetal mouse ovary. And initially, the FDA said, oh, it's nothing. And now they've really very mildly shifted their stance to say there may be some concern. And you're seeing a lot of companies are moving towards marketing BPA-free products. And what is BPA? It's the thing that's in the very clear baby bottles, those clear plastics, the Nalgene bottles. Really, we know it has estrogen agonist-like effects, and we have been recommending that people move away from them, especially in baby bottles and things like that, because the jury is out. We don't know, but it is an area of active investigation. So I'm going to just shift now and talk about delayed puberty. Basically, when should you bring in your daughter or tell your friends to bring in their daughter to see the doctor? What we say is pubertal delay is when it's greater than 2.5 standard deviations from the mean. So that means absence of any breast development by age 13 or absence of that first period by age 15 warrants a workup. The other thing I was talking about was sort of the timing and the tempo from breast development to first period is generally about 2.5 years. And if that hasn't happened, that's another reason to bring your daughter in. In terms of menstrual irregularity is very common right after onset of first periods. So this whole brain to ovary to uterus shedding the lining messenger system can take a while to be established, and really we can say it can take up to 5 years, okay? So having those slightly irregular cycles is not at all uncommon. You can see at 3 years, 50% of girls 3 years after their first period will still be having that occasional skipped period. Generally by 5 years after first period, you should be having pretty regular cycles. If your daughter skips more than, and actually, or if any of you do, because this can happen throughout the lifespan, but absence of 6 months of periods, less than 8 periods a year, or cycles, you know, the first day of your menstrual to the next first day is taking longer than 45 days. Those are all reasons to seek an evaluation. When I see adolescents in my office, I almost never, ever examine them on the first visit, and I think that's something important. A lot of, I think parents are sort of reluctant to bring their daughter in because they don't want her to be traumatized. The daughter's really stressed about it, so a lot of this workup can be done with just blood work and a history and a height and a weight and things like that, so definitely don't let that deter you. All right, I'm going to talk real briefly about a clinical scenario. This is something I see in my office very frequently, and then I'll move on. So this is a 16-year-old. She came to me. She hadn't gotten a period for 7 months. She'd gotten her first period at age 12 and a half, and they'd been pretty regular. In terms of her social history, she was a high school junior, the president of her class. She was on a travel team for field hockey. She's an excellent athlete. She was actively being recruited at her collegiate level. Andrea didn't talk so much about BMI, but it's a big thing that I use in my practice. Body mass index is sort of a height and weight formula, and a normal weight is between 20 and 25 for a BMI, and so hers was 18, so she was underweight. Her initial lab evaluation came back normal. I checked an MRI just to make sure her brain can get the message out. That was negative as well. So what she had, something, it's a big mouthful, it's functional hypothalamic amenorrhea, but it's basically that energy deficient state that I was talking about. The stress level was high because it's stressful for your body to have more calories going out than coming in. So that's the cortisol, fight or flight hormone. So your body says, okay, I'm fighting and I'm fleeing. Is it a good time to reproduce? No. The brain turns off that message to the ovary. The leptin level's very low, okay? So she had very low levels of ovarian hormones, very low levels of estrogen. Okay, and it mimics what she was like in her prepubertal state. Why do we care, right? Your daughter doesn't necessarily want to have a period every month. The biggest issue is that adolescents, and I'm seeing this much more in my competitive athletes, the triad is that there's low energy availability because they're really watching what they're eating, okay, causing irregular periods, and they're putting out a ton of calories because they're super active. It's very common with marathon runners, ballet dancers, and gymnastics. Gymnasts is who I see it in. But this is a time that is very important to build bone. So the bone that is laid down for your entire life, right now, where we all are, was laid down in our late teens and early 20s, mostly in our late teens. So if your daughter stops getting periods at this critical time in her life, she is not only losing bone, because we need estrogen to impact bone, but she's actually decreasing her peak bone mass. And that thinning of the bones, we cannot get it back. So that's why it's important that that be addressed. So the good news is that this is very treatable. Really what it is you correct the energy deficit. I try really hard not to put these patients on hormones initially. Dr. Epperson may disagree, but I send them to Dr. Epperson. I say, deal with the stress, and we try to really restrict their activity. But in periods of, when I know that they've been without estrogen for a really, really long time, sometimes I will start to replace it just to try to preserve some of that bone mass. But in general, this is very treatable. So if you can sit, and oftentimes if I sit and go through this entire pathway with a teenager, she'll say, oh, I didn't realize that I was doing this. And a little bit of activity restriction. The other thing that I kind of took out some of the slides, but the most important thing between the athlete who keeps getting her periods and the athlete who loses their periods is fat, okay? So a lot of these diets are calorie restricted, but the big thing is that there are some girls who eat 0 fat, and I mean 0, and not all fat is bad, and the body needs a little bit of fat to maintain normal activity. And so if they add in a little fat, decrease a little activity, as little as a 4-pound gain in weight can actually resume normal periods. So without any medications at all, and of course the long-term benefits are the biggest in terms of bone. This takes a multifaceted approach. You need to talk to their coaches. You need to have them involved with a psychiatrist or psychologist if there's a lot of stress and anxiety as well. So, in conclusion, puberty is a series of events. It ends in onset of menses, and variation is normal. Talk with your daughter about what to expect. Seek medical help if you have any concerns about timing or tempo, and encourage your daughter to maintain a healthy weight and diet. And do the same for yourself.
All right, did everybody get to do the raffle? No? No? Catherine, do we have, raise your hand if you didn't get to put in the raffle. Catherine will be back, and she will, we're raffling off mugs from our center. So I don't have any products. So, you know, as psychiatrists, you don't want our products most of the time. So, you know, they certainly aren't meant to make you beautiful, but they're meant to make you feel beautiful. Now, I am a Mac person, so I have no idea how do I get out of a PC? How do I escape? Okay, hit escape, and now I'm going to try and find my presentation. Oh, there's my presentation. All right, lovely. Okay, so I'm now talking about another part of the body, but I think Dr. Kalra's talk was great because she actually mentioned some of the things that I'm going to talk about. And I am a big fan of estrogen, I am, but we won't be talking about that particular hormone in this particular session. But so I'm here to bring up the rear, as they say, as the final speaker of the evening. And we all know that there are differences between men and women. I study sex differences with respect to the brain and how the brain functions. And there are big differences in the central nervous system, okay? So there are definite differences, and it's not anti-PC to say that the male brain is different than the female brain. That's okay. We've all said that, and it's actually the National Institute of Health is now criticizing. I sit on review committees for the government, and we actually criticize grants that come to us if they don't look at sex differences, if they don't really try and say, okay, well, what, because sex differences exist not only from mental health and behavioral health issues, but so many medical issues that are out there. And so it's a really fascinating area of work. Now, the one thing you probably know is that hormones are certainly different in men and women. This is sort of an example of what happens at puberty. Your estradiol and progesterone levels are going up and down with your menstrual periods, and then you get pregnant, and your brain is actually bathed in these really high levels of hormones. Well, then you deliver the baby, and you deliver the placenta, and guess what? Within 48 hours, you're basically a postmenopausal woman as far as your hormone levels are concerned. I mean, it is boom, 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 like that. That placenta is gone, and those hormones that were sitting there bathing your body and brain are gone. The thing that I want you to really appreciate is that hormones have an incredibly powerful effect on human behavior, okay? They're meant to help us reproduce, okay? Because if you think about what all species are doing on this planet is maybe it's reproducing. I mean, that's how we keep going as a species, is that we reproduce. And so the hormones that you think of as just controlling your periods and stuff like that and giving you breast development and what have you, they actually control a lot of your behavior as well and many aspects of your behavior. And so if you're like me and you're interested in the effects of hormones on the brain, it's much more interesting to study women when they've got all these ups and downs and what have you versus studying men, because this is what happens in men. You know, at puberty, the hormone levels go up and they stay up, and they don't do anything interesting the rest of the male life. You know, it's just not that interesting to study, so I don't study them. Okay, so we've talked about sex differences. But actually, there are some hormones that are actually going on in your body that are very similar to how the male counterpart. So I am actually going to talk a little bit about the stress system, because the female stress system is slightly different than the males, but the part that I'm going to talk about is actually very similar between males and females. Basically, just to give you a little primer, the hypothalamus, which was a part of the brain that Dr. Kalra was also talking about, which is in the brain, the pituitary, those actually secrete hormones that then get into the bloodstream, and they travel to what we call the adrenal glands, which sit, these tiny little glands that sit right above your, near your kidneys. And that causes you to secrete the stress hormone cortisol, okay? So how many of you have ever heard of cortisol other than just here? So it's the stress hormone, okay? So that's normal. That's a normal thing that you want to have happen. If you're having some stress, you want to have this particular response. And then that cortisol, once it gets secreted, it feeds back onto the brain to say, okay, we've had a stress response, enough now, turn off the trigger, okay, we don't need the stress response anymore. So it's, again, this very elegant song and dance between the brain and these organs in the rest of the body. So that's another actual very important thing to remember. It's not only that hormones have such an important effect on behavior, but there's this really wonderful song and dance that goes on between the brain and other organs in the body through these hormones, okay? Now, the thing that I wanted to emphasize is that there are parts of the brain, and you don't have to remember what they're called, but these are parts of the brain that are important for things like memory and learning and regulation of your mood and your libido. So we're going to talk about all of those things. And so this stress response, the cortisol, not only feeds back on the parts of the brain that say turn off the stress response, it also hits other areas of the brain. It's not like cortisol just kind of creeps into the brain and goes to the hypothalamus and says, okay, you can shut off your hormone, or the pituitary. It actually, the whole brain gets exposed to cortisol, and there are other areas of the brain that are important for behavior that get affected by these stress hormones. So hippocampus and prefrontal cortex are two of those areas. So basically, you're walking down the street and you see a lion, or you see your daughter's first boyfriend. And you go, oh my God. You have a stress response. You're frightened. You should have a stress response. That's the normal thing to do. You want to secrete cortisol because basically that's your body's way of saying, oh, this is a fight or flight response. If you see a lion, you're probably going to run, right? That's an important thing to know as a human, is that that's probably not a safe place. So you feed back this cortisol on the brain. But what about, for example, all these things like chronic daily stressors? I mean, how many people feel that their life has gotten more stressful in the past 10 years? Okay? I mean, when is it going to stop? I mean, it just can't keep increasing and increasing and increasing. But these daily stressors, what happens is that then you're getting all this cortisol hitting the brain and affecting these brain regions. And after a while, it actually starts to not help the central nervous system. It actually starts to hurt those areas of the brain that are important for learning and memory, for example. So there's some people who study dementia, for example, people, geriatrician, geriatric psychiatrists, and people that are very interested in brain aging. And they actually have concern that one of the things that we might be seeing about dementia is that it's really a response to stress over life. And that, of course, we're all stressed, and not everybody has dementia when they're in their 70s and 80s, but a large percentage of people do. And actually, women seem to be more likely to get Alzheimer's disease than men, okay? So again, we're kind of starting to see the brain can only handle but so much of this stress, okay? So I'm not going to sit up here as a psychiatrist and tell you that I have the magic wand for getting rid of stress in your life. Because I don't. I can't even get rid of the stress in my own life. I'm not going to be able to get rid of the stress in your life. It's just not what I can do, okay? So one of the things I can do is to help you become sensitive to the adverse effects of stress. And I'm going to talk to you about some things that I think, and the data and the research shows, are really helpful at fighting against the negative effects of stress. So one of those things is another hormone. I mean, a lot of you can remember when Demi Moore did this ad for Vanity Fair. But basically, oxytocin. How many people have heard of that hormone? okay? So a lot of you probably thought that it was important for milk letdown and uterine contraction during labor. So again, you were taught the reproductive reasons that oxytocin is important. Well, interestingly enough, oxytocin has very powerful effects on the brain and very powerful effects for something called the initiation of maternal behavior. So basically, if you deprive animals, if you study, we can't do this in humans obviously because it wouldn't be ethical, but if you do this in other species, you deprive the female of oxytocin at the time of delivery, she will not perform maternal behavior with the offspring. Bottom line, she needs that oxytocin in order to initiate maternal behavior, okay? So it's a very important hormone. It's called the cuddle hormone. It's a hormone that's important for that bonding behavior between mothers and their offspring, okay? It's also the love-making hormone, okay? When you have orgasms, you actually secrete oxytocin. It's a bonding between mother and child, father and child, but it also helps to bond between couples to have oxytocin. So it's a very important hormone for that reason as well. It's also an important hormone for when you get together with your friends and you kind of develop your female relationships. You feel good afterwards. When you go out and you do something together with your friends, don't you feel rejuvenated and a little bit better? It helps to decrease the stress. Oxytocin is released when you get stressed out. It's almost like the body is saying, I know you're stressed, but let me give you a little bit of something to help you fight against the adverse effects of those stress. However, it gets more released when you do all these other things. So good sex, whether with yourself or with somebody else, having orgasms are good. Being out with your girlfriends are good. Being with people that you love, connecting, hugging people. There's even data showing that people who hug more have higher levels of oxytocin, couples that are more touchy-feely. So again, these are things that you can do to help decrease the effects of stress. So what else helps to fight stress and promote well-being? Okay, I'm going to talk about the dreaded exercise. But I'm not going to get up here and just talk to you about exercise as, you know, you should do it. I'm going to explain why it's good for your brain. But first of all, this old guy, Plato. I think this is one of the most beautiful and well-written pieces. It's so true. He says the lack of activity destroys the good condition of every human being, okay? You can't make it any more plain than that, okay? While the methodical movement, while movement and methodical physical exercise preserve it. I mean, this was something they said, I mean, how many years ago? I mean, this is not just something your grandmother told you was good for you. Plato is telling you that it's good for you. Well, what does Joan Rivers say? She goes, I don't exercise. If God had wanted me to bend over, he would have put diamonds on the floor. And Ellen DeGeneres says, I don't really need buns of steel. Buns of cinnamon would be just fine. So clearly people sort of make fun of this concept of exercise because it is tough. I mean, and people don't really like to do it a whole lot. However, when you do it, don't you feel better, typically? Not just because you did something you knew that was good for you. You actually feel better because you secrete different chemicals, brain chemicals, when you exercise. So you get a sense of euphoria. You get a little shot of euphoria. You also are improving your aging. Your brain is going to age better if you exercise, and you have less risk of Alzheimer's disease if you exercise, okay? I told you that stress increases cortisol. It reduces something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Don't even worry about thinking about that. I'm just going to say BDNF. And BDNF is like brain fertilizer, and I'll illustrate this in a minute. But your nerve cells in the brain are happier when you have BDNF. So if stress decreases BDNF, guess what? I was going to say estrogen because estrogen does increase it too, but exercise increases BDNF, okay? So you're basically getting more brain fertilizer. Those nerve cells are happier when you exercise. Okay, and we know that lower levels of BDNF are associated with depression, and that exercise, actually there have been studies that have shown that exercise has antidepressant effects. So do I think it's going to cure a major depressive episode? No. But lower levels of depression, exercise can be very helpful. So this is just a nerve cell, this green thing sitting over there. And you see all those little spots on the green thing? That's a happy neuron. Why is that a happy neuron? Because everywhere there's those little green spots, that is a potential area of communication between that lonely nerve cell and all the other nerve cells in the brain. And the one thing that you really want to have happen in your brain is you want to make connections between nerve cells, because that is a healthy brain. We call that neuroplasticity. So without BDNF, that fertilizer, you don't get all those connections, okay? And so that's one of the reasons why those connections are so important. So when you think of, well, not when you just think about exercise, but when you do exercise, it is like you're taking some BDNF fertilizer, you're pouring it on the brain, and you're just sprouting those neurons, and they're just really happy, okay? So very, very important. BDNF, brain fertilizer, okay? So what about sex? You know, it's the end of the evening, we have to talk about sex. And you know, I know that some of you might thought, well, you know, this person's going to mention something about sex and aging. What about my libido? You know, I mean, you study the brain. I mean, the brain is certainly important for libido. Well, this is a colleague of mine from the University of Melbourne in Australia. And Professor Lorraine Dennerstein did this lovely study where she took a whole host of women that were premenopausal and studied them yearly across the menopause transition. And she looked at things like, you know, mood, libido, sexual activity, just overall a lot of quality of life measures and just sense of well-being, a whole host of things. And she basically said that there is one answer to libido during aging. And I'm not saying I'm a proponent of this, but this is what she found. Basically, she found that if you're with a guy who you weren't, you know, you've been with for a number of years, and maybe things were not going as well and you weren't as interested in having sex, what she found is that the best boost to libido was a new partner. So the women who had the best libido actually we're with new people. Okay, so what am I trying to tell you here? If you haven't really felt connected, again, the whole oxytocin thing is some of it is about connection. And so if you haven't really felt connected with your partner because you've just been so busy, maybe you actually kind of like the guy or the woman. Maybe you like your partner, you think, but you've forgotten why, you know, or you just haven't spent enough time together. You know, you can either decide to see if there's something there and to try and sort of build again sort of the flame that was there. Or quite frankly, I mean, the new partner works. I mean, people like novelty. You will become more libidinous with somebody new. That's the bottom line. Now, I'm not saying that there are not other reasons why women, as we age, I mean, we have hormonal changes, but quite frankly, replacing and giving a lot of testosterone seems to really only help women who were very, very hot, were pretty libidinous earlier on in life. So these were women who really liked sex very much and were very sexually active. And then when they went through the menopause, just noticed a really abrupt sort of a decrease in sort of sexual interest. So that if you know, women whose sort of sexual interest has kind of always been, you know, and then they go through the menopause and they're not happy with their sexual interest, it doesn't seem like androgens do a whole lot to at least promote that sort of sexual interest. And I think the most important thing to think about is that sex is very complex and that for women it's very psychological and that there are things that you can do other than just addressing your hormones. I'm not saying you shouldn't address your hormones, but there are other things to do. It's not a simple answer. It's multifactorial, okay? So, stress changes the brain and how you feel, okay? That's the bottom line and that's nothing new to you. Time with friends and good sex can be protective against stress, okay? Bottom line. All right. Exercise is a must for brain health if you really, really want to know the truth. And libido is just, it's complicated. I am more than happy to talk to people further about libido, but it is complicated and it isn't just about hormone levels. It really is about how you're feeling about yourself physically, which exercise can certainly be positive for. How do you feel about your partner? And how you feel about your partner today and your body today doesn't have to be permanent. Just because you may be not particularly happy with things in your relationship at the present doesn't mean that that can't get better. So I'm not suggesting that you just give up on it and go for the new guy, but you know, that's what she showed worked, okay? So you could stay with the person you're with and work on it, and I think that there's certainly benefits to doing that. But in any case, it's complicated.